Hi, this is Matt Lucas, and you're listening to the FSF Podcast.
All right, guys, our guest today is an actor, voice actor, and editor from shows you know like The Good Housewife, Shark, The World of Winx, and there was this little-known animated series back in 2003. Maybe you saw it. It aired on Cartoon Network. It was pretty good. It was called The Clone Wars. That's right, the original animated Clone Wars, done by Genndy Tartakovsky. And back in 2003, it's called the 2D micro series now if you're looking for it on Disney+. So who we have here today is the original voice of Anakin Skywalker. Not only from that show, but you hear him in games like one of my favorites, Battlefront 2. Not Battlefronts, the recent ones, but Battlefront 2. That game's still a banger. Galactic Battlefront and other things. So we are very excited to have the voice of Anakin Skywalker, Matt Lucas, here with us on the FSF podcast. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you, guys. I feel very welcome. That's actually a pretty cool little intro you gave me there.
Oh,
got a little accolade.
Thank you.
We try to actually be nice.
You know, the thing is every time we have somebody come on the show, thank you. Yeah,
trying is the hard part.
But every time we have somebody come on the show,
shameless. I like this. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was just saying, every time we have somebody come on the show, one of the things that we always try to do is we look back at what they're doing, and I knew that you were Anakin, the voice of Anakin from the micro series, in the 2D series, and I knew that you had done a couple of the games. I didn't realize how many of the games you had voiced as Anakin, which I was like, oh wow, well that's cool. And even during the Clone Wars video game, which had the different, the updated Clone Wars Anakin, I thought was kind of cool. You got to do that one as well. So anyway, I was just kind of mentioning that because I thought it was kind of cool, and I was like, played it, heard him in that. Anyway, so yeah, it was Star Wars. I geeked out a little bit. A lot. Anyway, but another thing I try to do is anytime we have someone here who's even Star Wars adjacent about anything, I always like to ask them one particular question. And the reason is, as we kind of alluded to in pre-show, is that I'm a giant nerd and I love Star Wars. If you can't tell from behind me, most of those are Star Wars. There's no alluding. I try to allude. I try to play it off as if it's not a thing. It's totally a thing. I'm totally a nerd about it. So other than working in Star Wars, Matt, what was your entry point into the fandom?
Oh, wow. Well, obviously, it all goes back to like everybody on their first time they saw which of episode 1, 2, or 3. I'm sorry, 4, 5, or 6.
Right.
And that kind of hits, for pretty much everybody, I would say, at some point in their life. I'm old enough to where it was, in the theater and this and that, and you try to take a look at it. Return of the Jedi. I had already seen New Hope. I'd seen Empire Strikes Back. But it was, I'm not even sure exactly how I saw him, but going into the theater and seeing Return of the Jedi with my father and my brother and those kinds of things. And you're already part of it a little bit, but that's really where it hooked me. And it was like, such a cool way to see Luke and how he gone from, just a kid, I'm gonna, at this point, grow up on screen in front of you and become a master. And that was one that was like a big hook for a lot of us. And then fast forward to when I was actually in college, and I'll go back to it. It was episode 1 on the re-release, and everybody's got their opinions of it and this and that. But I was there in line just as early as everybody else was to try to get a ticket in costume, as everybody else was. And it was in, a theater that had enough people to make it, it was a con at that point. It really was. It was just a reintroduction. Nobody had seen the film yet, and the opinions could come out one way or the other. But I loved it. I thought it was a great way of reintroducing what I liked as a kid to, for lack of a better way of saying it, kids. Little Annie, and it's like it did the exact same thing that, even though it seems a little bit odd that the more adult version, with Return of the Jedi did to me, it did the exact same thing, I think, to a lot of other kids. It just got us into the merch. It got us into the idea, and it introduced us, to the story and the characters, but giving us a different way. And luckily for me, I actually latched on to young Annie, and it's I was so enthused when I was auditioning for the part, never thinking it was going to be the case, because Hayden was a little bit different, as far as a person that you would pick up, his cadence, his way he talks, and man, I was floored when I got the role, and it just shot me right back to seeing Return of the Jedi, or seeing Episode 1. I've seen everything. It's why not? I have to. It's
Exactly.
because for me, I don't have to for work. I like it. I enjoy it, and it's just how the world is with me. So I'm
cool.
not as super into all of the lore and the books, because I haven't read them. I might get there, but it's, to me, the films are the thing.
Well, I'll agree, because that's pretty much where my fandom is. I know that there's a lot of people who have gone back through the books, and I'm trying to get through some of the books, but I'm far more selective as to what books I read and why, especially if it's one of the more. I listen to some of the. I read by listening. I'm an Audible guy, and but I found for me that it's mostly the newer stuff. Like E.K. Johnston wrote the Ahsoka book a couple years ago, and that book to me was awesome, because it tied in the timelines with what had happened to Ahsoka between this point and this point, and the post Order 66, and some of the other things. I listened to a couple other, I listened to some of the Thrawn books by Timothy Zahn, because he was Thrawn was coming back to Ahsoka series, and all these other things. So I want kind of making sure that I had re-cemented some of that stuff in my head. But I didn't get into the Star Wars books when I was a kid, because I always had the mindset that, well, if they didn't make a movie out of it, can't be that good.
Yeah, I mean, I get
wrong.
the mentality there. Yeah, but it's like, I agree that it is wrong. I think it's one of those things where the stories are vast. I mean, George was writing much of what he wrote for his films because he thought of them while driving. I don't know if that story. I'm sure that story's out. But he was just a very creative, writer. But he did it while he was driving around, and those kinds of things, were visual to him, not just story wise. And the movies came from that. They came from those visuals. But he also did books. I mean, all the other stuff, knowing that he didn't want them to be films. So not that they couldn't be. And I'm sure it's the franchise is going to keep on going. The books are going to be huge influences because of the backstory. They're the Bibles. They're the things that keep everything kind of going and understanding and answering questions. And that's really what it is. But some of those things don't need to be answered on film. Some of those can just stay in somebody's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer for that.
You said something in your answer, though, that I actually wanted to touch on before Tim gets to the next part of his question.
Please go ahead.
Because you mentioned when the prequels came out that it was reintroducing Star Wars to kids, and that is one of the wonderful things that we've actually talked about Star Wars, is how it's made itself multi-generational, that it makes sure that there's more story, there's more universe for the next generation. And then you can, as a parent, be like, hey, so this is the thing that I liked, but look, now there's this Star Wars content for you. It's like, huge Star Wars fan here too. My husband is as well. Our 5-year-old is not quite into the movies yet. The movies are long. It's a lot for a short attention span. But the new Young Jedi adventures, she loves. She has latched onto those like nobody's business. And it's still a gateway into Star Wars. It's still a way to get her into Star Wars. It's just here's the next little nugget for you. Like, I love that they've done that.
And Lego Star Wars too.
Oh, she loves
No,
Lego Star Wars.
absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of ways in. I say franchise, and it is essentially, a way of looking at it. It's like, there used to be the old Trekkies versus Star Wars and this and that, but it's rounded out with all these other things that get to use the story. Lego is a great way of doing it. It's putting it, on its ear a little bit, but it's also it's taking the fun and running with it. And that's one of the cool things. I mean, the video games, beyond anything else, the video games were another way for people to interact with the story, for themselves, and not just wait for a book, not just wait for a movie that maybe they can connect with. It's like, we can actually run around in Battlefront. It's like, you can be a trooper.
Yeah.
It's like, it's one of the coolest things. You can be a Jedi. You can do all these different things. You can use the Force in ways that are, the tactile things that we can have with our own hands and control it.
Yeah.
And for kids, and being able to connect in different ways, having just an idea is only the start. And that's what's kind of a fun thing. But I mean, if your 5-year-old is connecting right now, it's kind of like taking a little bite. Eventually it's going to become a meal, and it's going to keep on going, and it's just the way it is. So
we'll get her there eventually. When she tells us that Darth Vader is her favorite character, it will no longer be because of the Lego version of Darth Vader. She'll realize how fascinating of a multifaceted character he is. Not just the Lego like fart jokes and taco jokes, which are
which are outstanding, but
they are. Yeah. And Will Arnett doing all the fun things that he can for keeping that going. So I love that guy. He's great.
Exactly. So hey, Matt, just to follow up that question about your entry point into the fandom, let me ask you this. Now that being a fan and working in Star Wars, what does that universe mean to you? I mean, how does that working in that universe affected you?
Wow. It's a good question. Everybody's got like a different ways that they can put into it. I'm grateful. I mean, more than anything, it's like it gave me kind of a fun outlet at one point, some confirmation at others. You can take the good with the bad when you see the comments here and there. There's certain things that every single commodity is going to give you, and mine, it definitely gave me some gratitude. At some point, I was no longer the voice, and it keeps going on from there. And there's points where you're like, oh, I heard about this and this and that, but look what it gave me. I was able to play an amazing character who was, both good and evil, and not a lot of people think of it, but I did dive into the evil side. It's like it's not the voice that most people think of when they think of Darth Vader that I got to do for when I was Darth. It was more of a feeling, and I'm happy and grateful for having walked on that side of the dark side. It was kind of a cool thing. It was, for me, it's gratitude, I guess you could say.
Very cool. I like it.
So my husband John is the editor for our show, and he spends a lot of time removing Tim's foibles and gaffes, and they're everywhere. They really are. We love Tim, but he should not be a voice actor.
I do my best to entertain you.
But according to the Wikipedia of the entertainment industry, otherwise known as IMDb, it says that you were an editor on Last Mysteries of the Titanic and The Good Wife, among other projects. Again, IMDb is not always 100% accurate, but it does seem as though you've had some editing experience, obviously.
Yes.
So what was it that got you into editing, and what do you enjoy about doing that work?
Well, I would definitely say you're 100% accurate on the fact that it's not 100% accurate. There's a couple things with IMDb that you try to actually change, and they won't let you. But I am by trade a filmmaker, absolutely, and I am an editor from a long time. I spend a lot of time in the cutting room, even in what I do now. I more direct, whether it be commercials or films and short, a multitude of different products and this and that. But editing always ends up being part of my process. And it's a lot of ways you can say it's the final rewrite. It's a way of getting all of the pieces and the parts that were, in the script together and really making them sing, really getting the rhythm. It's not so far off from anything else. It's essentially gathering your paints as an artist and putting together that masterpiece, and it's sort of the last touch. Of course, that's not the last touch. Once we do picture editing after that, then we've got, the sound to mix, we do color correction, the grade, and all that other things. But really the story, the rhythm and the flow comes from that edit. And that's one of the nice things that I really enjoy about it. I just happened to be good at it when I was young, and Phil kept going into it. It's another reason why I do mostly voice acting, And I'm behind the camera a lot, and instead of being in front of the camera and cutting me that way, sound, I was always able to like sort of pitch and change and become other people with my voice, but I'm still Matt. I look like this. I can put on a this or that, but it's not the same. When I'm editing picture, I prefer to have the people that can embody the other parts, be those other parts, and though I love to do it myself here and there, it's a different love. So I would say when it comes down to editing the process, I like being able to take something that you thought wasn't going to work, make it work, and basically come up with the solutions. One thing I would definitely say, if anybody's an editor out there, never say no, because I would say to a suggestion. It's simple. Things can be told in 1,000 different ways. And your idea that you have, if you say the word no, it's mean you're not trying. And just because somebody who gives you a note in editing may not know the process, may not know everything like that, doesn't mean it's a bad idea. In fact, sometimes some of the best options come from the people who have no idea how to edit, how to do anything like that. They just come up with a random idea, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to do this, and this, and you create the solution. But their idea works, because why not? I mean, a film can be, version beyond version, and be good until it's not, or it can be saved all in the cutting room.
I just love that I heard you weren't saying it, but it was a conversation between John and I. Hey, could we do this? And he's like, well, I have to do this. And he's like drawing what you just said. I got to do this, and this. I'm like, well, what if we change this? And I'm starting to learn editing, and I'd rather John did it. Let's just put it that way.
Understood.
I can audio edit. I'm not as good at video editing. Audio editing is a little easier for me, but
yeah, two different flavors, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of people that can do both, but doesn't mean you have to be able to do both. It's kind of the nice thing about it. You will get the tricks, and all that stuff will flow. But when it comes down to picture editing, sound editing, when it comes down to even music editing, once you start to delve into something, you can become very good at it just by understanding it. So once your knowledge base goes up, no matter what, you're going to get better at it.
Yeah. Awesome. I will occasionally be in the room when my husband's editing, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're doing or how you're doing it.
Right.
Or, nope, I don't get it. I'm going to walk away now. Like,
that's how it goes. Well, let me clear one thing up that on IMDb, I was on Last Mysteries of the Titanic, and I was originally an assistant editor. I was in there to assist a really good editor who was on the show. Actually, there were three at one point, but one of which also was James Cameron himself. And so I worked with him as an assistant editor, but they put me into the compositing role. And this was a show where they needed a compositor, and I happened to have the ability and the skills to also do that at the time. And so I kind of switched out of being in the assistant role into being in the lead compositor, and interacting with a master, like as I called him at the time, Jim, and seeing his story process and this and that. And he would come in late nights. He even had a cutting room at his house. It was really close to our location. And you would just see that he loved the process too about that edit. I mean, he's known as a writer, known as a director, known as even a cinematographer, and not as known as a production designer, but he was even started there. But he is a great storyteller in the cutting room as well. And it's like some of the best are just amazing in the cutting room just because they give it time. And it's kind of a fun thing. So not editor on Last Mysteries, even though I probably wanted to be at that point, but at the same time, at least clear that up. It was, so they did get one thing wrong.
it happens.
Oh, I'm sure it's not the only one. We're going to talk about some other stuff. Give it time.
But since then I've cut a lot of stuff. Oh my gosh. It's never going to hit, IMDb for that things, but yeah.
Fair enough. All right, Matt. Also, according to LinkedIn, you're part of a company called Unity Films as a director. For both TV and film, working behind the camera. Now, according to IMDb, you haven't been in front of the camera since 2018. So according to IMDb, it's a span of 6 years, nearly. So in that time, what lessons have you learned over the past 5 to 6 years that have made you a better actor or director? Something that could help somebody else.
I love this question. I do. I love it a lot. I have been in front of the camera, but I've spent a lot of time in Europe, and so I've been doing commercials over there, here and there, and so my on-screen stuff also is kind of seen internationally, not knowing it's me, things like that. But I would say the fun thing for me, in that I do a lot of directing, I've got kind of a gearhead for when it comes down to the technical thing. So it comes down to editing. That is very technical, but it's also an art form to me. I actually started in production in the role of trying to be a cinematographer. So when it came down to working on sets, that was huge on that. When I was young, I was working with ESPN, running cables and being a camera back, to finally end up being in camera for sports, things of that nature. And I actually got into editing because I needed to cut my own stuff, things of that nature. It was like in there. As it turns out, when I went to university, I was trying to do sort of both directing and cinematography at a young age, because I'd been even shooting weddings since I was 13. I'd always had a camera, always. And it was like a filmmaker from kind of that start out. Being in the nuts and bolts of things, I learned quickly that if you didn't talk somebody's language as a director, it's really hard to convey your message. So I knew how to do camera stuff, and I learned how to do the editing stuff. And I moved to Hollywood, and I started to work on sets, doing student films, this and that, as being a grip in the electric departments, everything I could do. But just trying to learn people's vernacular, the common parlance of being on set, and being able to convey your ideas and your vision. Now, as a director, you're not always going to get exactly what's in your head. And why should you? I mean, it's a collaborative art. So you just need to be able to get the team behind you and essentially speak in their terms, in their way, and come together to get the images and to get the story. And I think my best advice to anybody who's trying to learn how to direct now, it's not a requirement, but I really feel you should start to understand and respect and come out from somebody's idea of their job, whether that is sound, whether that is grip, electric. I mean, even to driving the truck, understanding what goes into the job. I mean, the decisions are quick. A lot of times it's like, as a director, when you're coming on set for, say, a commercial, the product well enough. You're not the person who developed the product. That client is there with you, but the crew has never seen this product. Maybe they are. Maybe they're the techs that have set up the shots and help you to know how it works and all this other stuff. But for the most part, all these people just come on for the same time, and a lot of them will want to suggest stuff and be like, "Hey, you should do this. You should do this. You should do this." And some directors will just literally shut them down and be like, "Hey, you don't know what you're talking about, because I've spent weeks with this product and I know what I'm doing, and you don't." But it goes back to, don't say no with the editors. Understand where they're coming from their job, why they thought it should be lit like this, it should move like this, it should turn like this. And as a collaborative, group, you'll get it together. And I would say, don't shut anybody out who's got a suggestion, but also try to put yourself in their role when they're given to you and try to speak their language back to them. And you will get a way better result, sometimes even faster, which is kind of nice. Long answer to that, that question.
Great answer.
Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. Yeah, and we've said this many times on other interviews. The best answers are sometimes the long answers, because sometimes it's in order to understand what's really trying to be said, you can't have a straight A to B. Sometimes you got to go A to D to back to B to be able to make that nice loop. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really good advice, because I think sometimes even here with our show, I know that sometimes I can be a stubborn person. I try not to be. Shut up, Kathleen. Anyway, exactly. But I try to make sure that I'm listening to what everybody else has to say and what their opinions are, because sometimes I have something so in my tunnel vision that's all I can see and that's all I can think about. And so I think that's really great advice to make sure that you're listening to other people's perspectives and seeing where they're coming from, because maybe they have a better way of doing it. Maybe they've got maybe they're seeing
Yeah.
it from something that you're just missing that little bit to make that whatever it is, really work.
Right. And it can trigger something for you. It even goes back again to what we were saying about the editing, not saying no and things like that, where you've got an ability to understand whatever it's a product, whether it's a story, if it's a script, if it's even the actors. Like you can't suggest something for these actors because you don't know what I know. It could be, something they're not comfortable with. It's something that they don't want to go down this route, or, because they feel the character does this. I mean, suggesting that you have to be a filter. And that's going to be exactly what the voice of someone who's directing is always going to end up being. That's why a lot of people will come to you to ask the actor to do something, and it makes sense because if everybody starts shooting it out, then it's directed by committee. But that filter time gives you the ability to actually process what was said, put it into the way that is going to work or not work for the person you're conveying that to, and a lot of times that can actually be for the client. If anybody wants to get into client work, and as we all kind of do, I mean, in the end, it is a business, and there's people that have to pay for the bills of that, and they're the client. So it's like being able to understand how to convey somebody else's idea, filter that, put it into perspective, but also learn as you're doing it and go, hey, this will work because I remember we talked about this in a meeting, blah, blah, blah. But also try not to offend because you're not going to work again.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's a great answer, Matt. Thank you.
So we try to do as much research as we can about our guests before they come on. And honestly, I could not find that much about you. Like, you have kept your life pretty personal, your personal life pretty private. And honestly, with as toxic as some of the Star Wars fans can be, I definitely understand that. But in a time where so many people share so much of their personal lives online, what benefits have you found to keeping a lower profile?
Benefits, it's a tough one. I don't know that what I do every step of my, every step of the walk, I'm basically just like, and the journey, kind of winging it. But I definitely at a young age started to get like fan mail, which was great, and things of that nature, and getting an idea of what arena I stepped into. Luckily stepped into, as I keep on trying to convey, as and keeping a lower profile has also hurt me. But I would say the benefits of it, I kind of just feel like I've got the creativity inside to come out when it's needed, and I try not to boast about it. If I put myself out so much so to where I felt like I was rubbing somebody's face in the success that I've had, I wouldn't feel good about it. And I got to a pretty high level with it, and I was really happy about it. And I was, I couldn't have said anything more. But at the time, social was only so great and so big. Facebook was around, and MySpace, all that other stuff, and you could have a platform. But I kind of felt, when the series went on, and actually, I did record as Anakin on the Clone Wars 3D half-hour series. I did 6 episodes, which probably nobody knows because it's never going to air, and that's okay. There were different ways of going with Anakin, and in the end, Matt Lanter, took off from there, and then most people know him as Anakin, and that's fine. So me jumping on the social and saying, hey, I'm the original Annie and this and that. I'm really not, but at the same time, I kind of felt like it was the wrong position to take.
That's fair.
It actually makes a lot of sense.
That's fair. I mean,
thanks.
You'll always be Annie to me, my original Annie. But
I appreciate that. No, and honestly, to be completely honest with you, I think that sometimes it's an error because I might be working a lot more. I do a lot of voices internationally, mostly because in town and this and that, it's harder to put yourself out. There's a lot of actors out there that have a mic, and I've got a full recording studio, and not a week goes by that I'm not on a mic. It's just how it is for me. But I'm not used as much, and I probably would be used a lot more if I was more social about it and posted more about it and put myself out there. So it's something I should definitely consider. But again, I'm not always going to say I'm the right. I'm in the right.
I always find that it's easier to let other people talk about me than for me to talk about myself. I don't like the feeling of patting myself on the back, and maybe that's just the Gen X in me. But you know, I think it's easier for somebody else to give me a little bit of praise, and I still shy
Mhm.
away from that. Even if, you know, when somebody's like, "Oh, you did a really good job with this," thanks. It's hard
Yeah.
for me to take that, and even, you know, and I've had to kind of tweak that a little bit because we're a smaller podcast and trying to get out, you know, get people. I have to push it, and I'm putting it out there on socials, and I'm doing, you know, promoting it. But I know I never feel like I'm promoting myself. I always feel like I'm promoting the show, which is
Mhm.
also difficult because I've started doing some writing for a couple different websites, and I have to promote myself as a writer, and that is difficult for me because trying to find it where I'm not going, come watch us, come listen to us. Now it's come read me, and I
You
don't.
got to do it though. I
That's
know everyone says you got to sell yourself. You got to get the stuff out there. You got to get the subscribers. You got to click, 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 and yeah, and it's all for that success. And so it does make sense that people are going to ask you to do it. Unfortunately,
it's
and
just
you know,
it's just
I
hard to
come from
do.
that same generation. It's hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to put yourself out there, and if you're not already done it, I have a lot of people in my life that are actually really good at social. I mean, you know, borderline influencers, and they're great, and you know, I respect them 100%. And I'd like to do some of it. I mean, some of my posts, they're just like the things that you know, I feel are important. And visually, you know, I try to put up some images and stuff like that I shoot because I do have that photographer, cinematographer brain that's
Hmm.
always looking at light and trying to catch moments. And so I'll put that stuff up. But it's not me. It's just, hey, this is a great image. That's just
Yeah.
what I do. Yeah. I mean, it's also part of. I mean, as a voice actor, you're behind the mic, and I've worked with some amazing voice actors in my time, and I hope to continue to work with many others. Like, you know, for one, James Arnold Taylor. He is
Hmm.
not what you would think when you see him and you hear him. I mean, the guy does
Hmm.
Fred Flintstone, and I mean, he's
He's
a buck
amazing.
20. You know,
Yeah.
he's
Soaking
he
wet, by the way.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. In boots, ski boots at that point. You know, it's just like what can come out of a guy like that, and everything that nature. It's like, you know, if he was to put himself out there, and he does, I'm sure. If he's to put himself out there and it says like, you know, it's like Chicken Little. It's like all of a sudden that the big strong guy who can do so, you know, so many
Yeah.
huge things in a tiny little package. As far as I'm not saying that, you know, whoa, cut that one out. Not
We heard
saying that
nothing.
that he, yeah. I say he's shorter than I am, but he's not that short. No, I would say the fun things are in the voice world is being able to convey something from behind a microphone without being seen and being convincible. And
Right.
that's kind of thing. If I can convince you that I'm able to do, you know, this character and not have to push that stuff, you know, on the click bait and all this everything else, I kind of feel like I did my job. And that's actually the
Right.
fun thing about voice acting. And there are many actors that I work with and I have as friends that cannot do it behind a mic. They just can't. It's not the same. It's really not. It's not having the visuals to convey the character is a handicap, but it becomes a liberating handicap for the people that can actually convey it. I mean, just the tiny little things that we do with our voices that can convey an emotion. That's all you have when it's a microphone. You can't
Hmm.
cry and be seen. You can't well up. You can't get the little quivery lip. You have to make a sound.
Right.
Yeah, so it's an insane side of the business when it comes to voice acting, and I think it's full of talent, and I'm,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
so happy to be a part of that.
Yeah,
But
we've had
you
a.
know, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying we've had the pleasure of talking with so many different voice actors, and a number of them have commented on that very same thing, is that the differences between, you know, the physical acting and the voice acting, and how, you know, physical actors, they get to emote and do these things, and, you know, some voice actors are like, yeah, well, we still do that, but, you know, we still do, you know, we're moving our hands, we're doing the things, and he's like, because that's
Mhm.
all part of acting, but we have to do more of it with our voice because we have to make it more believable, because all you get to hear or see from us is our voice. And then later you get to see something animated, and we get to see what
Yeah.
the drawings were and what it looked like, what we were voicing. We get to see what it looks like then. He says, but
And can you imagine, that actually makes it a much more difficult thing to actually get a part, because a lot of people will get a part based off of looks. They may not have the ability to act as well as somebody else that may not have the look of the character nailed,
Mhm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about it, I mean, yeah, we can manipulate our voices and we can change our emotions and all that stuff like that as a voice actor, but it becomes very difficult to get a role as a voice actor based off the fact that it can be, very subjective, super subjective, because all you are is a sound. People are clicking through and they're like, hearing the auditions, that's not what I want to hear at this moment, at this day, and this and that. Somebody else could have been picked for Anakin. That simple
Right.
as that.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a great segue into my next question for you. So let's jump onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Star Wars for a moment, and let's talk about the challenges of voicing Anakin Skywalker. Because when you came out into it, Hayden had already been Anakin, and there was a lot of comparisons that I've read online between what you did as Anakin and what he did as Anakin, because that's what people had to compare things to at the time. So, what were your challenges personally for becoming Anakin Skywalker and voicing Anakin, especially when there's already an established character out there? Because in my opinion, I don't think that you sound like Hayden Christensen. I don't think you were trying to sound like Hayden Christensen. I think that you were playing your character the way that you saw him. That's my opinion. I may not be right, but that's my opinion. So I guess the biggest thing is, I guess I'll shut up now and stop rambling, is what were the challenges of becoming Anakin Skywalker for Matt Lucas?
I'd say some of the challenges at the time, were, the original idea was, hey, we've got a sound alike that we need to find. And I think when it came down to LucasArts trying to do this was not for the micro mini series at the beginning. This was for a video game. And the idea wasn't that we were going to be doing scenes. The idea wasn't that we're going to be developing a character more than what this game is. We're going to try and see what we can get it out of. And the auditions were all from Hayden from the movie. But they were really short, and they were just, kind of one-offs. And he always seemed to be kind of brooding at that point and trying to, I guess, be very sincere and with Padme and things like that. So the reference I got didn't have a lot of emotion. I mean, people can say that, even in his performances that, he didn't get to those certain points until it was like pushed out of him and this and that. But what they sent me for the sound alike was, a very somber, monotone kind of a thing. And so I was like, I need to bring a little bit of life to this in my audition. And I did the lines, and I did them very different from what you would have thought, because they gave us the exact lines that they had on the sound alike. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here, and I'm going to do them a little bit different and put some emotion in them, because it's like, at this point, if I'm just the same monotone thing all the way throughout, I know I'm not getting this. So I think the first challenge was hearing something, understanding it, seeing it on screen very little, and trying to create where it could go without being able to understand where it was going to be going and where it ended up. When by the time I got to the mini series, we'd already done 3 or 4 games, and at that point I had an idea of where the character was. But I would say right out of the gate, being chosen probably was maybe a little bit of a gamble, and a lot of voice actors will probably say that they got their job because they turned it on its ear a little bit in the audition. And I think that was a big, so it was a bit of a, at the time you're auditioning, you're like, oh, I'm going to get this or I'm not going to get this. And they don't tell you don't get it. They just don't tell you anything. So you don't get it. So I went that little bit and put some emotion into it. Next thing I know, I got called, but they had to pull me back. They said, you're kind of there. Let's see if you come in and you do this other little thing. Can you hit it? And at that point, that's when they asked me basically to hit Hayden right off the bat, which I did for the video games. it wasn't until later on that they let me be a little bit more Matt. And that's probably what you're more responding to, what you finally heard, what I came into from the evolution of the character. But I still needed to have a lot of Hayden in there. And you can say I sounded like him or I didn't sound like him. And some people were like, "Oh man, you nailed him dead on." I hear the difference, obviously. I mean, I'm me, but it was one of the things what Genndy wanted to do was be a bridge, literally, from episode 2 and episode 3. And if you hear, and if you watch the series and then all of a sudden go right into scene 1 of episode 3, I tried to hit that one pretty dead on. I'd like to say I did. Even the screams, that we had between Hayden and I, hard to see which one is which sometimes. But yeah, I would definitely agree with the fact that I'm not Hayden, and nor was I. It was like there was a joke that I was going to make a phone call to him as him while we were in the booth one of these days, and from him from the future. It never materialized. I was going to be like, "Listen, you've left your keys. Yeah, don't go in there, master. It's not going to be good." He would go. Yeah.
Love that.
Oh, I love it. I love the fact that you took a chance and you got it. We just talked with Catherine Tabor, who voiced Padme in the 2008 series, and she said she thinks that one of the reasons why she got the role is because she called Anakin Annie. She said it wasn't in the script, it wasn't anything in this. She's like, but I like to ad lib. I like to kind of go off script a little bit here and there. She's like, not too dangerously far off, but so it's always kind of interesting to me. Again, having talked to enough actors and voice actors on the show, when they talk about auditioning for things that a lot of times it's because they put a little something extra. They put something of themselves into the character that made it stand out. Something jump off the page to the casting directors and the other people who are running the auditions and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of cool to hear that from you as well. It just kind of ties everything together in my brain anyway.
Yeah, thanks. No, we're all different people at this point. I would like to say, I was just doing Hayden and that's how it was, but it wasn't. I couldn't be robotically Hayden at that point. So I had to put me into it, and because we had completely different lines, completely different things, and it was just the scenes couldn't be compared from one to the next until we started to jump from 2 to 3 and get the scene of like we're literally going into the fight, and we had to kind of match.
Yeah, and I get that, and I know you have to do that from time to time, but I'm actually glad that we have the differences in the way that you voiced Anakin, and the way that, of course, Hayden did Anakin, and the way, of course, Matt Lanter did Anakin, and everything else. I think that allows for appreciation of each person's individual characteristics and how they do things. And each one of you brought a different vibe and feeling to Anakin and how it was done. And I, over the last couple of days, I've been watching a lot of the 2D micro series, and I was watching honestly about 10 minutes before I jumped on here. So it's just a lot of fun to be able to go back through that and hear your take on Anakin. And it's in my mind, it's a very calming take. And I don't know if that makes sense, but your version of Anakin is a little more subdued and a little more calmed. But it has its moments where, especially like in the episode I was watching today, there's the line there where you're comparing, and I'm not asking you to remember the line, please don't think that, but there's a line where basically you're telling Obi-Wan that he's no Qui-Gon Jinn, basically, and then all of a sudden it's like,
I do remember that line. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you had some up pitch, and then it comes down, and then just those nice inflections in your voice, and whereas and I think that those are the parts where you really shine, where you had just normal everyday Annie, and you had your moments where you had the bursts of little flame outs of anger, or emotion come up, and then realizing what he was doing, and then you come right back down. And I thought you handled those really well. And so
thank you. No, I appreciate that. It's good to hear it. I mean, you read certain things and you're like, oh man, he was horrible at this, and this. It's like, I don't agree. Everything, it doesn't work out. but it was a choice at the time, and I wasn't the only one making that choice. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Genndy was awesome. I mean, he was subdued, but he had a vision. And I mean, from Samurai Jack, a lot of that stuff came from the micro series. I mean, there were things we
Mm-hmm.
did in the video games that we didn't touch, when we came into Clone Wars. And kudos to him. He's he's amazing. And then Dave, who's taken the role of essentially being the Star Wars guru from here on out, was handed the reins literally probably by George. He and Favreau are putting this thing together. The two of them, working with them as directors. Like I said, I was on the new Clone Wars series for a while, and it was Dave that basically chose me. It says, I had to re-audition for that. I wasn't by any means was it like, hey, you got this. It was a re-audition. And then, at one point they thought to go some other direction. They actually asked me to pull away from doing the Anakin of old. And we changed the character, and in the end they ended up going with Matt Lantern. That's fine. But you're working together with somebody trying to get to that point too. And so it's like, I got to give the credit to the people that were trying to pull it in the right direction. And, but we didn't have a lot of different takes on that one. That particular scene, I do remember that recording day, and it's like, No Qui-Gon Jinn came out, and that was just like, all right, moving on to the next one. And I was just like, okay, next page. There we go.
No, that was a really cool line. I was like, oh boy, he just shot that over the bow. And then anyway, so I know you were very good in that. It was that you made watching Clone Wars, that micro series, for me more entertaining. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, that is my pleasure. Thank you for saying it.
So
Kathleen wants to say something. You say something. I know you're in there.
I was waiting. No.
Okay.
I was just thinking, because I mean, we talked about what goes in behind the mic, but as a creative person, as a voice actor, as a director and editor, what advice would you give to someone who's starting out their creative endeavors to help them on their way?
Oh, wow. Creativity comes in different forms, by all means. And so I can see this question that can, put its way into absolutely everything. If you're, into Legos and architecture and things like that, I mean, your creativity needs to come out. I would just say that just similar, I would echo what I'd said before. Try to learn what you can and see what interests you, but also be understanding of the fact that there's many ways of doing all of what you're going to do. And so that means that you're not going to be wrong or right when you're trying to be creative. The world is going to be what it is, and you're just stepping into a part of it. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You're going to make mistakes. Why not? As an actor, I made mistakes a whole bunch of times, and it's like, sometimes you can say cut and sometimes you can't, or sometimes you're shown the door, but you still got to try. It doesn't say to limit yourself. Don't limit yourself. Give it everything you can, and just do what interests you, because in the end, that's how we find each other. It's like people in relationships in their lives are going to continue to live their life until somebody else enters it, because they were on the same trajectory, not for any other reason.
Right. I love that though, with the be creative. There is no wrong or right with being creative. It's like, there isn't, is there? There's
rules, but
right.
You can break the rules if you know the rules. So, I mean, I would definitely say that, like, there's the action line. You respect the action line, but when you break the action line, it's where, it throws the audience off and it puts them into a different perspective. It's like, we're Dutching the camera or things like that. Or maybe I'm not going to use the brush that's right for this particular type style of painting, or, I'm going to go a different route. Break the rules, see what happens. I mean, try it. Like cooking. Cooking is probably the most easily shared creative thing we can do from one person to the next. It's like, you can make an egg 1,000 different ways. It doesn't have to be this way. It can be, this or that. Don't use salt. Throw oregano in there. Try it. See what happens. It's just like, it can work. It can work.
It can.
I love that.
Yeah. Very good.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Matt. We are done with our serious questions. And we have one final question for you. We like to call it our silly question. Now, we used to ask a variety of different questions, but we settled on this one for a little while. We might change it up here in the next little bit, but we're still enjoying the responses that we're getting off of this one. So we'll see. And we started asking this because we thought it was a shame that as an adult, you don't get asked this very much or ever. So, Matt Lucas, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, favorite dinosaur. I like this one. I like this because with kids' books being as they are, there's always one that comes up, and oh man, I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say pterosaurs. So I would say anything in the pterosaur family. I'm gonna go with I just could easily say pterodactyl, because it's the most vanilla of what people know from pterosaurs that fly. A flying dinosaur, to me, is probably the coolest dinosaur. I mean, yes, being huge as a T-Rex, or being a brontosaurus, or you can't say that now anymore. Like all the different evolutions of land-based dinosaurs are cool, but they didn't fly.
Right, that is true.
Yeah.
I don't think
I would say a pterosaur as general, but then again, you have to say pterodactyl, because there's so many different pterosaurs. I don't know if you guys have been into any of the like in San Francisco. I've already forgotten the name of the Museum of Natural History and things like that. There's amazing exhibits on all the pterosaurs that were around, tiny little things that to what we think are even bigger things, and they're just so cool. Sorry, they can eat and run and fly. There you go. Done.
You know what's funny is I don't think anybody's actually said pterosaur yet. Like,
no, I agree. I think this is the first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
So, I mean, Stegosaurus is cool and all, but they can't fly.
No.
There are no Triceratops, I tell you.
Yeah.
That's my favorite, but
That's cool.
Parasaurolophus is my favorite, but that's because they have trumpet heads, and that's just
oh yes. See,
the fact
that they are a musical instrument in and of themselves is pretty cool.
Yes, and it was the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto has one, and I think the Field Museum in Chicago has it too, where you can like squeeze a bellow through the model of their head to show how it potentially worked for them to make the sound and blow the sound through their own sinuses. And I'm like, that's so cool.
That is pretty cool. No vocal cords. It's just sound.
Yeah. It's just that it was a different way of exhaling, where they'd push the air differently through their nostrils. They'd close their nostrils and push it backward, and it sounded like a tuba.
What do you think the conversations were for the people that were just learning how to blow? It's just like, hey, you're a little off pitch today. A little pitch. Yeah. Could you bring that? You feeling okay? Feeling all right?
You sound a little congested.
Yeah. I'm more of a baritone today. I'm sorry. I'm not feeling it. It's just like, yo, tuba. It's just like, everybody see this guy's Captain Clarinet over here. How you doing, Mr. Squeaks? It's just like, I can see how it could be really good.
What the little ones have sounded like clarinets and oboes, and then
I gotta imagine as you went, through your voice cracks as puberty, as a dinosaur. Wow, you could put yourself in some bad situations.
It would sound like a middle school band concert.
It certainly would.
Oh man,
I'm starting to hear band room right now from high school. Oh my gosh, it's just. But think of the size of them, though. That was a completely different thing.
That would be fascinating.
Wow.
Goodness. Oh, Matt, we have enjoyed so much talking to you tonight. Where can our viewers and our listeners go to find out more about you and your work?
As it was even said earlier on LinkedIn, I'm going to start probably accepting some advice and putting more of the stuff up there. But I will be at Pensacon. So if anybody is headed that way into Florida, I'm going to be there for probably one of the times that I was at Celebration many years ago, to kind of put forth that Anakin actually had another voice, and that was me. But I'll be at Pensacon. So if anybody would like to come see me there, it's the end of February. And let's say it's going to be a good time. There's going to be a lot of us that you haven't seen for quite a while. It's been an event that 100% is always had a following, this and that, but you're going to be surprised of the people who are there that you can meet, and I would say come meet me. It's a good time. But yeah, I'd say LinkedIn is always a fun one, and that's kind of the one that the industry sort of uses, and of course my Instagram. It's just Matt R. Lucas. So yeah.
Okay.
Spell my name right though. Don't forget, it's only one T.
Right.
That's right. If you put a second T in there, you're trying to figure out why this English. Matt Lucas became English and left the Great English Bake Off. So,
British.
Yeah.
British Bake Off, excuse me. Yes.
He was also, running around with the 12th Doctor for a while. So.
Well, there's also that.
He was also Astro Boy, which has been a good thing and a bad thing, because people get us confused in the fact that, Astro Boy was a voice and this and that. And it's just like, hey, did you do Astro Boy? No, that was the other Matt Lucas. So it's like, I know that the two of us are also not the only Matt Lucases. So at least I can say, I'm the one with the one T.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we will definitely link your LinkedIn. That's fun to say. So that our viewers and our listeners can find you. And we will link the con's website as well.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
And we say, want to remind everybody that subscribing is a thing. This is where we do the self-promotion thing and put ourselves out there. That subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to help us ensure that we get more amazing guests like Matt Lucas here today to have these great moments for you guys to be able to listen to. So please subscribe, check that out, and go check out Matt's work as well. If you haven't watched the 2D Micro series in a while, go back and watch it, because if nothing else, General Grievous is way more intimidating in that series than he is in anything else done by Star Wars. It is the best way you're going to see General Grievous, and he actually makes sense as why he was so important to get out of the battles that you saw in the 2008 clip. Yeah, but anyway, that's a whole other topic.
And why he talks the way he talks. Yeah, the series answered so many questions. Don't forget that. Go see it. It answered so many questions. It connected dots.
It very well did. Absolutely. And there will be parts of this conversation that you think you've heard all of, but I guarantee you haven't. Some of this will be on Patreon as behind the scenes and bonus content. So you're going to want to go to our Patreon channel. Check us out there at patreon.com/FSF Podcast, where you can join us for as little as $1 a month all the way up to $40 a month. There's 5 different levels of subscriptions. You guys want to check that out. But hey, if for whatever reason you're not happy with the content of our show today, please feel free to lodge a complaint with the head of our complaint department. That, of course, is the man that we make cookies for, and Anakin's new master, Emperor Palpatine, or Captain Sparklefingers, or Space Satan, as Ryan Airy from Screen Crush likes to call him. But he has made it clear that he doesn't care anything about you or how you feel or how anyone feels. It's all about Space Satan. So just know that when you submit your complaint form in triplicate, that you aren't exactly out of the line of trouble. Old Palpy will just as easily dispatch you with his underlings as he does us. The only difference is the level of annoyance that we have probably caused him by perpetually being bad at our job of podcasting. So yeah, there's that. And it was nice knowing you.
We're gonna die.
Good disclaimer.
You're so screwed. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap us up today for the FSF Podcast. Goodbye.
Copyright 2024 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.